Hello and welcome to Behind the Screen. I'm JM, and this is Behind the Screen, a show where we just take a step behind the GM screen and we talk about games we love, we do product reviews, we talk about adventure design, campaign clinics. Basically, consider me your personal DM or GM coach, just giving advice out from my decades of enjoyment of this hobby. So, we're here today to talk about what makes a good starter box. We talked a lot about on Tuesday about um, different kinds of starter boxes and ones that I like. We brought up the Pathfinder 2 one. We talked a little bit about the Warhammer one. On Exploring Glorantha, I've talked ad nauseum with Evan about the RuneQuest starter box and how much I love that. Now we're trying behind the screen from the studio today to kind of see if the audio and the visual looks better. Bob, no shadows, I think. Let me know what your thoughts are on this view here at the studio. But I figured I want an object lesson, right? So we can talk about excellent. We can talk about what makes a good starter box, but without actually having something physically in front of you, it's always a little bit difficult. So I want to go over one that I like. And I have been a huge fan of the Cubicle 7 starter boxes. It doesn't really matter which one it is. It doesn't matter whether it's Warhammer or the one that they have for the one they did for the One Ring First Edition, the one they did for Lone Wolf, the role-playing game. But today we're going to look at the Soulbound starter set because I think I haven't reviewed it yet. I got it and have enjoyed reading it. But I want to show off what I think really makes a good starter box and what really makes it a good intro product for new players. Because a lot of people will look at starter boxes and go, well, if I buy the starter box, why would I then go around and pay essentially $20 more and not just get the core book? Yes, the art on this one, Bob, is amazing. First of all, this is the box that it comes in. I'll show it off on the big screen here in a bit. But one of the things that always strikes me kind of immediately here, let's jump back because why not? I control the vertical and I control the horizontal. So this is the Soulbound starter set. And what's amazing about this starter set is there's not a single wasted space in this entire thing. And what do I mean by that? Well, the back of the starter box is the GM screen. The inside on the bottom of the starter box is the map of the Great Parch. So essentially, now I have my GM screen, my map, and my rolling box all in one put together, which is, frankly, just great. I don't know why more companies don't do things like that. This is good use of space. It provides additional value, even if I'm going to go into and buy the big core book later, the starter box still provides value to me. So what does this thing come with? Well, this is everything that comes in this box. You get dice, as I'm sure you all are aware would come in there. You get tokens for Doom and what are they called in this game? Doom, Soulfire, and Metal. And most games then also have these. This is the read this first. If you've looked at the Essentials kit or the D&D starter box or the Pathfinder 2 starter box, they always want to make sure, hey, you have a good understanding of, right, the GM is usually the one who buys this. What is in here? They use, Cubicle 7 uses these trifolds, which I love. So this is an overview of what's in the box, what's in the game, and an overview of the setting. But then again, like I said, no wasted space. This on the backside is the party sheet for the GM to track the members, the names, how to use Soulfire, the goals, their allies, their fears, and their doom. So when you're done, you set the what is in this box in the center of the table, and it is a playmat for everyone at the table. Cubicle 7 wastes no paper in their starter box. It is always super useful. So in addition to how to get started, dice, maps, and tokens, we are given I'm going to be very careful with this. We're given 5 character folios. And a character folio is just their character sheet, but what I love about them is, let me go to my other image here because I pulled some images because there's just so much goodness here. Here's the outside of one of the character folios, and this is for Zan Bemir, the Excelsior War Priest. So on the back, you have the character art. You've got an introduction to the character. What are his quotes? Who is this war priest of the devoted of Sigmar? What is he like? And why should you play this character? So for Zan, confident in the God King's favor, Zan can handle any situation. He can bring the purifying light of Sigmar and his crushing warhammer on his enemies. He can use medicine and healing spirit to aid his allies, and he has a Griffhound companion. But Cubicle 7 has a number of hidden things about the character inside the character sheet. And the reason that that is important is because you have goals, connections, secrets, and you get rewarded for taking more of these at the start. And so you end up with a character sheet that stands vertically. It's got your character information on the inside and enough character information on the outside that you can pick the character without everyone knowing everyone else's secrets. Now, we talked about how Soulbound is sort of Warhammer turned up to, 11Z, and then added in with just crazy gonzo, just wonderful weirdness that was at the original of Warhammer, but sort of kind of went away as the series setting started to take itself very seriously, which I love about old Warhammer. The old world, I love that it takes itself so seriously, even with the whimsical nature to it. Age of Sigmar, the question, it follows the rule of cool. If it's cool, it's in there somewhere. We'll come up with a reason for it, but what we want is we really want this awesomeness right out of the gate. So you get to play as a war priest. They have a Kurnoth hunter, which is essentially like a tree ranger. They have a tidecaster, which is from the Idoneth Deepkin, which I love. They have a Skyrigger, so if you want to play a dwarf with a jetpack and a flamethrower right out of the gate, you can. And then they have a Knight Quester, which is sort of one of the Stormcast Eternals. So again, you get a ton of great... I mean, we're not even to the books. This is just the first 5 or 6 sheets right off the top of the game. Then, this book has, let's see, they've got reference sheets. Always need reference sheets. So these are 3 reference sheets. Oh, you can't really see them because of the glare. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to blind everyone. It's usually my forehead doing that. These are the reference sheets. They've got spell reference sheets for everyone, rules reference sheets, and then combat reference sheets. So you can pass these around the table when it gets to someone's turn, and then they get to look into it. You would play the War Priest, Bob? I could see that. I could definitely see that. I really kind of want to play an Idoneth Deepkin because they just look amazing to me. They give you another map so that the players have access to a map of the Great Parch, as well as the city of Bright Spear, which is where the main adventure takes place. What else? All right, so that gives us some of what we need. Gives us a good introduction to the world that the GM can digest in essentially 10 or 15 minutes. It gives us pre-generated characters that hopefully are tied into the adventure, and we'll get to that in a second. And we have reference sheets, tokens, and dice. So immediately, you are at most of what you need for this game to work, right? You got, for $30, this is all of what comes in here. So then, they give you this, Bright Spear, the city guide. Now, what's great about the Cubicle 7 box sets is that this city guide is useful beyond just the starter box. The guide to Ubersreich in the fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy one, is the best information on Ubersreich. So they've, like the RuneQuest box set, they've sort of looked forward and said, we don't just want this to be useful only when you have this box set. We want this to be useful going forward. So this is a 64-page book that covers a couple of threats, which probably are also in the main role-playing game. I'm not entirely sure. I should have double-checked that before this. But it definitely has at least 40 46 pages of in-depth look at one city. So it's not like when you buy the starter box. One of the key for me of a good starter box is that it always remains useful even when I buy the core book. And so this has all of the information on Brightspear, and this is basically where you can get the information on Brightspear. And finally, it should come with an adventure. Now, this is the adventure, The Faltering Light. It's set in Brightspear, which makes it completely useful to all GMs of Soulbound. It has ties, each character has a direct tie to this adventure. Now, Soulbound uses a goal-based experience system, so that's very important for this adventure to provide clear goals for the players so that they can get their advancements and level up. And then again, like I said, no wasted space. On the back of the adventure is all of the weapons, armor traits, conditions, and environmental traits. So they've used the back and the front of all of their books, of their box, and of their character sheets to ensure that they're, again, not a wasted page in one of the Cubicle 7 starter sets. I'm trying to see what's on the back of the Brightspear. Oh, this is another map of Brightspear, but it's coded. So as the GM, you can kind of know where everything is. So again, yeah, Bob, for $30, it's great. I think some of my design concerns when looking at starter boxes is the fact that there used to be this idea that really the starter box was only there to provide an entry point and really move you as quickly from the entry point to the main game. And so essentially you would get a starter box, you would play through it, and then you would set it aside, get the real books. And so it was really just looked at as a parsing down of the information that was in the main book. What we're seeing now is a lot of people coming to the understanding that starter boxes can have a longer lifespan than your first experience with the game. We talked about how Pathfinder 2's starter box leads into 2 additional supplements. One is a standalone adventure, and then one is a short 3-book adventure pack. So that guides the GM from running what's in the starter box to running another standalone module to getting into the ecology of Pathfinder 2 and their adventure paths. The Chaosium starter box go one step further in there, making it accessible to new GMs as they have a solo adventure in there. It's like a choose your own adventure. You can actually go on the Chaosium website, I'll put a link in the show notes, and play through the RuneQuest solo adventure online for free. Introduces you to the world of Glorantha and into the rules of RuneQuest. But that acknowledges the fact that, most of us are going to buy a starter box because we're interested about the game, but we may not have people to play with yet. Cubicle 7 and Chaosium both are looking toward longer lifespans for the material and content in their starter boxes, beyond just the dice and the tokens, right? The Brightspear book in here is 64 pages. Now, is it worth $30 on its own? Probably not. It's gorgeous. The art is amazing throughout it. But, I would say probably like a $20 supplement. But if you consider you get the tokens, a makeshift GM screen and map out of the box, and an adventure set in Brightspear that forms the basis of your starting out into Soulbound, it's almost silly not to get it if you're interested in Soulbound at all. And then it has an ad. They have a little ad sheet both for Warhammer Fantasy and for Soulbound in the back. Cubicle 7's Warhammer one does the same thing with Ubersreich. You get the Duchy of Ubersreich and a lot of information that really sort of only exists in the starter box and is high level everywhere else in like the core rulebook. RuneQuest has a ton of great stuff in theirs, and I know Chaosium is putting out a new Call of Cthulhu starter box, and they have plans for a Pendragon and I think a 7th Sea starter box. I think there's this understanding that starter boxes are a really great breaking in point for people who may be coming from other games. They have a ton of supplements for, let's call it 5th edition. And they're a cheap entry point into would I like this? You're committing to 4 or 5 sessions with most of these adventures. It's not a big overhead cost-wise or learning curve-wise, and you can go to your group. Say you're like Bob and you've got a group that's like, we only want to play 5th edition. Well, you could always say, hey, I got this starter box. I really want to give it a try. Can we play this for a month? Take a break from our 5e game. Play a quick month's worth of Soulbound, Pathfinder 2, Cthulhu, something like that. And see if your players are really willing to bite on something new, right? A starter box game is a very easy sell to a lot of people. Hey, we're going to play 4 times. That's it. We can go back to D&D or Catan or Monopoly. But can we just try this for 4 weeks? And you can usually get most people to bite at a small 4-week thing. Yes, Bob, more swashbuckling. Also, on a completely separate 7th C note, I got to play Pinebox Games' City of 5 Sails, the new 7th C card game, which I should point out, as was pointed out to me, it has nothing to do with the old 7th C card game. This is very much more a swashbuckling duelist game and not a game about pirate ships. It is really good. Evan was able to stand there with me and... Oh, that's Ben. Evan was able to stand there with me and look on. It is very fast. The cards are very... taking the art from swashbuckling. It's great. I'm going to try and pick up a copy when we go to Gen Con. Ben, you should definitely look for that card game as well. I think you would really enjoy it. Yeah, exactly, Ben. There's no need to even do a character creation session with a starter box. It's everything you need. You can jump right in. You can give everybody the what's in the box speech, what's in the box, and go from there. Hey, Rook, good to see you, buddy. And thank you so much for joining us here today. Look, I mean, I see a bunch of other people in the chat that I know from a ton of other iconic shows. It's always good to see you guys. Certified to Organic, Dr. Frankenswine. And yeah, good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. So, all that to say, what makes a good starter box? And I think this is it. I think you can, if you are a game company and you want to know what makes a good starter box, look at Cubicle 7. Look at Chaosium. They are the people who are using every bit of design space that they have to ensure that it is easy for a GM to pick up, it's easy for a group to sit down and play. The Soulbound and the Warhammer Fantasy one, the first act of the adventure takes the GM step by step. Now call for this kind of roll. Here's how you do it. Now call for this. Okay, we're going to do combat. Have everyone do this. Here's why they are doing this. And they hold your hand through learning the game. And especially with the Chaosium ones, with those solo adventures, and if you like solo adventures, just as a shameless plug for Chaosium, their Alone series, you can actually buy, I think they have now 4 more solo Call of Cthulhu adventures: Alone Against the Flames, Alone Against the Frost, Alone Against the Tide, and I'm pretty sure there's one more. All right, Ben, you had to bring that up. Now, before I answer Ben's question, we had a question on the chat on, I think it was an Exploring Glorantha one, and I know that Evan answers those, but I use the term F20 a lot. And somebody was like, what does F20 mean? F20 is a term that was coined by people at Pelgrane. It might have been Kenneth Haidt or Robin Laws, I'm not 100% sure which. That basically says it covers every game that uses the D&D style resolution system for gaming. So it covers Dungeons and Dragons and all of its variants. But F20 could also refer to any of the OSR clones. It could refer to 13th Age. Games where a D20 with a modifier is versus a target number, whether that's ascending or descending is up to you. So it stands for Fantasy 20, I think was what its original was. So Ben, your question is, what do you think about the fact that 5e and WotC has like 5 different starter boxes now? And is it a turnkey onboarding experience? I know you just recently learned those marketing terms, and I feel like you are jargoning me right now. I see you, Ben Feehan. So here's the thing. I know that the original starter box and the Essentials kit, the Essentials kit kind of was designed to build on top of the starter box or go with it. I think I don't know about the other ones. I don't know if they're iterative in the fact that they are refining the starter boxes to make them even easier and simpler to onboard people, right? That's sort of what the turnkey onboarding experience is. But I do know one of my main problems with I have a lot of problems with the Mines of Phandelver adventure, but I think one of the other problems is it really quickly tried to onboard you into Tyranny of Dragons, which I don't know that it did successfully, right? Because you end up being a little bit higher level than Tyranny of Dragons assumes, but it's kind of set in the same area and came out at the same time, so there's this linking. I don't know about the other starter boxes. It could be, hey, we've learned more about the game, or hey, we want to tie these in with the new upcoming adventures, or it could just be we know fans will buy it, and when somebody goes to look for a starter box for D&D, they're probably going to get the newest, the latest, and greatest. I think what is missing from those is this idea that the starter box needs to be useful beyond the content, the adventuring content that's in it. So the essential kits kind of leans that way because you get dice and a GM screen and some cheat sheets that are helpful. But what I like again about Cthulhu and RuneQuest and the Cubicle 7 Warhammer ones is that you're getting information that is existing only there. So as a GM, you can go back and constantly reference this again. The fact that they have solo adventures in the Chaosium ones is something that I think, I don't want to say is necessary, but I think is very helpful for new GMs to be able to say, at the very least, if I buy this, I'm going to enjoy it. And it's always easier to sell your friends on a new game if you've played it and you understand it. And so a solo adventure walks you through how to learn that. So, wrapping all this up, I think starter boxes need to do 4 things in order to be a successful entry point into your game. 1, it has to explain the rules in a sort of gate-stepped way to onboard GMs quickly. It's got to have a way to onboard players quickly, which is usually pre-generated characters and a good starter adventure that holds everyone's hand going forward. I really think that it's got to have all of the tokens and fun things that you need. So, for example, Torque, which I love. I love that it's a one-and-done rulebook, but you also have to buy the card deck. And then you also have to have possibility tokens of some sort as well. And so I think it would be very hard to make a Torg starter box like this. I have a couple of ideas on how you could do that, but you would have to include, right, some Destiny cards, you would have to include some Drama cards, and you'd have to include some Cosm cards, because they are foundational to the way the game is played. If you were doing a fantasy or a Fading Suns one, you would have to include Weird Points and Fate tokens because they are necessary for how the game is played. And lastly, and this seems to be something that is new, I think there has to be something legacy in the game. Something that the GM, like, if I were running Soulbound, I would take the Bright Sphere City Guide out of the starter box and leave it on the shelf next to all of the other books. Because that gives me access to the material that I will need going back to this starter box. Or, another idea of legacy is the idea that the Pathfinder 2 starter box leads directly into Troubles at Otori and the Abomination Vaults. The Warhammer Fantasy box leads directly into more Ubersreich adventures. You can get Ubersreich Adventures 1 and 2, or you can jump into the Enemy Within campaign. It has a clear path from the starter box into the product line. Now, one thing that most starter boxes don't include, and I think this is okay, most of them don't include leveling content. I know that the 5th edition ones do, right? And they're usually just at 2nd level, you get this bonus. At 3rd level, you get this bonus. Same with the Pathfinder one, because leveling is so important to those games. You want to have a very simple, maybe pick this or this in Pathfinder, or in 5th edition, you don't really pick anything until you get to level 3. But what that does for you is it gives you just enough of the role-playing carrot that the players, if they like it, are going to want to learn how to increase their character's potential. And that gets them right into the main book. Now, the other thing that is great about having a starter kit that's well put together is the fact that all of the resources in these starter boxes also act as a second set of rules at the game table. So if you have somebody who can't buy a $50 or $60 rule book, you have an extra set in the starter box, but it also provides a good way for players to get a copy of the rules for themselves pretty cheaply, right? You certainly need the main book for learning on how to, advance or more monsters or new gear, but the basic rule sheets are in this starter box. So that's it for JM's thoughts on RPG starter boxes and a Soulbound starter set review. Bob, the art in this is amazing. We'll have links in the show notes. If you want to support the channel and you end up using any of the links, we get a little bit of compensation for you guys using our links as opposed to just general links. We'll be back on Tuesday, and we're going to take a look at Savage Worlds next week. As I've announced on the other Behind the Screen show this week, we are launching into a Deadlands game on the Iconic channel starting in June on Monday nights. Bob and Rook are going to be playing in that, as well as my producer JD and an old fan favorite from the Torg and Fading Suns games. So I'm going to take a look at Savage Worlds, a game that I love and I get to talk about. We're going to look at the core rules on Tuesday, and then we'll look at Deadlands and Rifts on Thursday of next week. But this Saturday, join us for Exploring Glorantha at 10 o'clock Saturday morning. Evan and I will be talking with Chaosium President Rick Meitz about the fun things that they have coming up out of the vault, essentially. And we talk a little bit about the Chaosium Con as well. And then, last but not least, the new logo art produced that Bob Crum did is on our Redbubble store. If you want to get some cool t-shirts or merch with the awesome new logo, you can go over to Redbubble and find the stuff there. We'll put a link in the show notes for that as well. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. It is always great to sit down and talk with everyone here at Behind the Screen. If you like what we do, please consider following us here on Twitch, following us on YouTube, liking, leaving a comment. It helps the algorithms say, hey, this is fun stuff that other people should enjoy. And if you want to help support the show, consider subscribing here on Twitch or at our Patreon at patreon.com/Iconic Production. So again, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming, and we will see all of you on Tuesday when we once again step behind the screen.